few weeks ago I uploaded a video on nostalgic internet mysteries, which are probably my favourite type of internet mysteries. Those from a time before most disturbing or perplexing finds were just uninteresting ARG attempts. As with the last video, I've included a mix of mysteries that were more well known, as well as a couple of more obscure ones. Some aren't exactly mysteries, but they at least have, or had, an element of mystery to them, so let's investigate. If you enjoy internet mysteries and generally disturbing content, feel free to subscribe and turn on notifications for more content like this. If you're interested in supporting the channel, you can become a Ko-fi member or a channel member to gain access to uncut videos and other perks, or you can leave me a tip by clicking the thanks under this video. Thanks to anyone who considers this. This video will include vague descriptions of some gory content. Viewer discretion is advised. You can click the link in the description to become a Ko-fi member and watch an uncut and ad-free version of this video, which features a whole extra entry that was unsuitable for this cut. In early 2006, Depravity.com was created. It was a website featuring various gory photos and films. It's now defunct and limited archives remain, but you can still see most of the photos in one album titled Shooting. The first photo shows a woman in a white dress, gagged and tied up, sat outside a building at night with her back to the wall. She looks terrified, and a shadow can be seen on the building that looks to be of a man with a gun pointed at her. The next photo confirms this and shows the back of the man, who is wearing jeans and no shirt. His back is tattooed, and there looks to be two faces. It's not clear what the tattoo in the middle is, as the quality isn't great. He has long hair that's braided at the back with shaved sides. He appears to be wearing a mask to cover his face. The next photo is almost identical. Both people are in the same poses, only this time there's a gunshot wound in the woman's head and a splatter of blood behind her. After this, a couple of photos show the woman slumped on the ground with the blood smeared on the wall showing how she fell. Then there are more of the man sat on her, wiping her blood down his neck. You can see the front of his mask in these, and it's a grey colour with markings and blood-covered eye holes. It's not that clear though, again due to the photo quality. If you try to zoom in, it just becomes pixelated. Obviously I can't show the gory photos here, you can check them out yourself on Wayback Machine, but they do look very realistic. There were other photo sets and films on the site, but I couldn't find any archives of them. Titles of the other albums included Burn, Smile, Wood, Sacrifice, Exorcist, Enslaved, Autopsy, and Necro. You can imagine what type of photos were in those albums from the titles, and I found some comments online of people talking about this man doing various things to corpses, not safe for work stuff if you get what I mean. The man in the photos was a serial killer who went only by the name Morgue666. A few people tried to contact him via the site, but I don't think anyone ever got a reply. The site seems to have been taken down in November 2009, leaving many to wonder if Morgue666 had been caught by the police. It turns out he had, though the situation is likely not what you're thinking. As I said, the photos on the site looked very realistic. There were no obvious signs they had been edited, but those who genuinely believed they were real had either not read or were not convinced by the warning message that appeared before you could even enter the site. It read, "Warning, this website contains graphic and violent imagery. No one was hurt in the creation of these images. This site is dedicated to horror and special effects. Nothing here is real." Of course, it absolutely could have been possible that some depraved serial killer was posting actual photos of his crimes and victims and passing it off as special effects, but that's not what was happening here. The man behind all this was named Remy Couture, and according to his more recent website, he is a self-taught makeup artist and creator of special effects. He has worked on a number of movies and TV shows, such as The Mummy 3, The Punisher, Warzone, Night at the Museum, and Bloodbath. InnerDepravity.com was his first project, and he wrote on his website, quote, InnerDepravity.com was a web-based multimedia project I produced and created back in 2005. It consisted of a series of short movies accompanied by several photo sessions separated into several themes. This project allowed me to showcase several techniques of special effects and my artistic creativity. It was a website dedicated for amateur adult audiences of gore, and the warning on site clearly stated that this was a fictional site. Then I decided to put my project on DVD in order to present it to a few film festivals. Inner Depravity 1 and Inner Depravity 2 were born in 2006. Inner Depravity Volume 1 was presented to the Spasm Festival and won the mention of the Most Disturbing Movie in 2007. Inner Depravity is a site that immerses you in the sordid world of a psychopath. It takes you in the archives of a fictional serial killer in the form of visual diary. The content, very graphic, showing the results of its bloody madness, the result of his murder, photographs of his victims. So this was definitely a fictional site, but Remy still got arrested because of it. Quote, "Why was I arrested by the Montreal police in 2009? A web surfer from Germany reported to Interpol the content of my website. Obviously, he could not read English, and the Montreal police either. My fictional work was so real to them that they concluded that my fictional character was actually a real killer." The person who reported Remy was actually an Austrian pathologist, not a German web surfer, and he filed an international arrest warrant after watching one of the Inner Depravity movies, which showed murder, mutilation, and SA, because he couldn't be sure that the scenes weren't real footage and that a homicide hadn't been committed. After Remy was arrested in Montreal, he was charged under Article 163 with corrupting morals by manufacturing and distributing obscene materials. The case went to trial in December 2012, and articles about it reveal various other details about Remy's work. There were around 1,000 images on the site, alongside the 2 films, which focused on a serial killer who was assisted by a 10-year-old boy, played by the son of one of his friends. By the time of the trial, it was pretty clear that Remy's work was fictional, and police officers who had set up a sting operation to catch him by posing as clients looking to do a photo shoot for Halloween, testified that they had doubts all along that the images and films showed real murders. It sounds like the objective of the prosecution at this point was to prove that the material was obscene and dangerous enough to actually incite people to act it out in real life. The jury were told to determine if this was the case, and if they deemed his work to be obscene and gratuitous, they should find him guilty. If they deemed it to be artistic, they should find him not guilty. This was understandably a pretty controversial case at the time. Most people thought it was ridiculous that someone who never actually harmed anyone could be facing up to 2 years in prison. The models all volunteered to be part of the projects, knowing exactly what it was about, and what appeared to be fatal wounds and signs of torture were just latex and fake blood. He even made it clear on his site that none of it was real. It's not like he was posting this content without warning, intending for people to imitate it in real life. While pleading not guilty, Remy argued that the state had no business defining what art is, or infringing on his right to free expression. Many were concerned that if Remy was convicted, this would be a massive blow to other art of a similar nature. On the other hand, a small but vocal group of people argued that his work was so realistic that it could encourage others to actually torture and murder people. They also highlighted that all the victims were women, and the not safe for work nature of some of his work made it particularly dangerous to women in general. Remy claimed that he had planned to create a new video where the female victim turns the tables on the murderer, but he never got round to it because his special effects career began to take off. Russell Smith, a columnist, wrote about Remy, quote, "It is hard to find sympathy, no matter what the legal argument, for a guy clearly so obsessed with the torture and dismemberment of women that he represents these over and over again." Personally, I can understand the concern to some extent regarding this type of content being harmful to women. The essay more so than murder, considering how common essay seems to be. It's plausible that such acts could be viewed as normalised if someone is often viewing content that arguably promotes it. Context is important when dealing with such themes. I think SA being shown in a movie where the focus is on the effect to the victim, rather than the gratification of the offender, is quite different from content that just depicts SA, without providing any commentary on the morality of it. That said, I don't think Remy intended to encourage people to commit murder or SA, and the fact that he is a special effects artist is very relevant. His motivation for the project was to promote his work and to make it all look as realistic as possible. Even if you argue that his work could be harmful and so shouldn't be allowed, I don't think he should be punished for it. He was just doing his job. I also don't understand why he personally was targeted. He's not the only artist to create realistic-looking photos or films of this nature. If you're opposed to his work specifically, you should also be opposed to most other horror content in general. I think the most problematic part of this is Remy's decision to involve a 10-year-old child. I'm not sure exactly what the child's role in the films was, though he was apparently the murderer's accomplice, and a police spokesman said about the films, quote, "People were sure that a child was molested and killed. This implies that the child's murder was shown and that the film depicted some kind of SA on him, which is pretty messed up, even if it was fake." Anyway, the trial lasted a couple of weeks, the jury spent 2 days deliberating, and ultimately Remy was found not guilty on the 21st of December 2012. It cost him $30,000 in legal costs, and he highlighted on his website that the whole ordeal had cost taxpayers a ridiculous amount of money. There are plenty of photos of his work on his more recent website, but none seem to be depicting SA, and it's no longer exclusively female victims. This site also isn't telling a story like the Inner Depravity site, it's very clearly just showcasing his work. It doesn't look like he's still actively updating it. The last film he mentions working on was in 2011, and his last independent film was in 2013. His Instagram and Facebook accounts linked on the site have been taken down too, but according to IMDb, he worked on a short film titled Conflict in 2023, so it looks like he's still somewhat active. The Paris catacombs are a network of underground tunnels that were created in the late 18th century to bury dead bodies due to major public health concerns with the city's cemeteries. The decision was made to transfer their contents to an underground site, and now they hold the remains of around 6 million people. The catacombs have become a popular tourist attraction, and it's recommended to book a guided tour because the network of tunnels is vast and intricate. However, there are various secret entrances used by urban explorers, known as cataphiles, who prefer to explore the lesser-known areas of the catacombs without a guide. As the footage we're about to cover shows, this is a really bad idea. Sometime in the early 1990s, a camcorder was found by a cataphile who had decided to venture into part of the catacombs not open to the public. The footage was in black and white and was shot by a man who had also been exploring the catacombs some time prior. It shows him walking through the tunnels, past various human remains, and he picks up part of a broken skull at one point. He appears to be following arrows painted on the walls, though it's not clear if these are leading him to the exit or further into the maze. Shortly after the camera shows a drawing of a skeleton on the rocks, the man starts breathing heavily and running. Perhaps he was panicking because he realised he was lost, or someone or something was chasing him. No one knows. He never says anything in the video. Suddenly, he drops the camera, and you catch a glimpse of his feet as he runs away. This makes no sense at all because it seems that the camera was his only source of light. The only plausible explanation is that he saw something that shocked him, and whatever it was, he was too scared to go back for the camera. The video ends shortly after, and no one even knows who the man is, let alone what happened to him. The cataphiles who found this footage gave it to a filmmaker named Francis Friedland, who presented it on an episode of ABC Family's Scariest Places on Earth in 2000. There was apparently around 40 minutes of footage, but only a couple of minutes of it were shown in this episode, and the rest has not been released publicly. After explaining what happens in the video, Francis decides to try and retrace the man's steps, perhaps even find his body, assuming he never made it out. He and his crew enter the catacombs via the entrance they believe the man used, and they seem to have actually been on the right track, as they see the painting of the body on the wall and a tunnel full of bones that looks the same as one in the footage. By this time, they had been walking for about 6 hours and were deep into the catacombs. Their batteries were dying, and concerned they might get lost themselves if their flashlights stopped working, they were left with no option but to turn back. Francis concluded that it's unlikely anyone will ever solve the mystery because there are just too many miles of tunnels down there. He appeared on an episode of Ghost Adventures in 2014 and said the man who filmed the footage has still not been identified, and to that day, his fate was unknown. There has been a lot of speculation regarding the authenticity of this video, with many speculating that it was created by ABC Family or Francis himself to make a story for the TV show. It wouldn't be the first time that people have accused the network of fabricating details for the show. It had a segment on the Vilissa axe murders, and they allegedly featured a fake newspaper reproduction, photos of an unknown family who they claimed were the murder victims, and a paid actress who posed as a resident of the town. Furthermore, this Catacombs episode aired around a year after the release of the Blair Witch Project, when the concept of found footage was a novel and popular theme. If anyone were to fake such footage, this would have been the perfect time to do so. It's also interesting that this story doesn't appear to have been linked to any missing persons reports, nor have there been any announcements about it from police departments in the area. It seems unlikely that no one would have reported this to the police, including Francis himself. That doesn't necessarily mean that it is fake. There isn't much to go off in the footage. We know nothing about the man, and he doesn't even speak, so unless he told people he was going to the catacombs before he disappeared, and those people reported him missing with that information, I don't know how it would be easily linked with a report. This is also assuming that he did actually disappear after dropping the camera. It's entirely possible that he still somehow made it out and wasn't even aware that the footage had been found. Scariest Places on Earth is an American TV show, and this man could have been from France or any other country, so we can't necessarily assume that he would have seen it and come forward to confirm he is still alive. The footage itself is arguably not that unbelievable. It's not like a ghost or monster pops out at him. You can't hear anything unusual other than the man breathing heavily. And when you consider what likely happened, it removes a lot of the bizarre speculation that's been made in the years since it was released that makes it seem far-fetched. People have theorized that he encountered something paranormal or that he was being chased by someone, and that's pretty unlikely. If you believe in ghosts, I guess the catacombs would be a hotspot for an encounter. I personally don't, but regardless, there's no evidence in the video of anything of the sort. It seems unlikely that he ran into another person down there. No one even knows for sure how big the catacombs are, but there are hundreds of miles of tunnels. If he did encounter someone else, they were likely down there for the same reason as him. I don't think serial killers are going to be hanging out miles into the catacombs waiting for a victim. It's much more plausible that he was lost and started to panic. It'd be pretty terrifying if you had been walking for hours in a labyrinth of underground tunnels, surrounded by human skeletons. You don't have a flashlight, and you realise you don't know how to get out. It would be pitch black in there. It's apparently so quiet that you can hear a pin drop, so even the slightest noise could freak you out. The panic alone could have been enough to make the man act irrationally, and it's possible he could have experienced hypoxia due to a lack of oxygen, which may have put him into a state of delusion, leading to him being convinced someone was chasing him. There is still the question of what happened to him. As I said before, it's possible that he did find a way out, and he never came forward to publicly announce he's okay because he wasn't even aware someone found the footage. If he died in there, by the time the flesh rotted away, finding his remains in a sea of human remains would be like finding a needle in a haystack. If we assume the video is real, and it really was found by a cataphile who gave it to Francis, the man in the video's route was at least somewhat known about, considering it appears Francis and his crew ended up on the same route. Of course, this was about 7 years later, and by this time, there would only be bones left of the man, so it was unlikely they'd come across him, but I'd assume many other people have been there less time after, and still, there are no reports of anyone finding a recently dead body. We don't know where he ended up though. Francis got about as far as the painting of the body on the wall, and said the man took a right turn from there. Even if they found the area he dropped his camera, it's anyone's guess where he went after that. Perhaps he crawled into some small space, attempting to hide from whatever he may have believed was chasing him, a space that no one in their right mind would risk going into. I can say though that if I had to put money on it, I'd bet that this footage was a hoax. As I said before, it wouldn't be the first thing the TV show was accused of faking. Francis never came close to making it big as a filmmaker. No one had heard of him before this, and this catacombs video is arguably what he's most known for, so it makes sense this could have been an attempt to boost his career. Not that it really worked, considering hardly anyone even remembers his name in relation to it. The backstory of this isn't really believable. If I was a cataphile who found a camera deep into the tunnels, with footage that suggests a man might have gone missing, I'd be giving it to the police, not a random filmmaker. The way Francis acts in this episode is questionable too. He says that various hidden entrances to the catacombs have been shut down by the police, and talks like the one he found was a more recently discovered one. Considering the tunnels run for hundreds of miles, what are the chances that he entered through a recently discovered entrance and somehow ended up at the same place that the man in the footage did? When he gets to the painting of the body, he says they'll have to turn back because he's worried about the flashlights dying, but they have them all turned on. Surely you'd turn some of them off to try and preserve the batteries. Anyway, even if the video is a hoax, it still had me vowing never to go to the catacombs when I first saw it years ago. It's not an internet mystery per se, considering it first appeared on a TV show, but I first saw the footage on YouTube, and when I think of old internet mysteries, it's one of the first that comes to mind. The next mystery we're going to cover is mostly a verified hoax, so feel free to skip this one if you're not interested in that, but it'll be sure to invoke feelings of nostalgia if you remember it. In 2008, a website was created, thisman.org, which centered around a sketch of a man that many people had supposedly seen in their dreams. The website explains how it came to be, quote, "In January 2006 in New York, the patient of a well-known psychiatrist draws the face of a man that has been repeatedly appearing in her dreams. In more than one occasion, that man has given her advice on her private life. The woman swears she has never met the man in her life. That portrait lies forgotten on the psychiatrist's desk for a few days until one day another patient recognizes that face and says that the man has often visited him in his dreams. He also claims he has never seen that man in his waking life. The psychiatrist decides to send the portrait to some of his colleagues that have patients with recurrent dreams. Within a few months, 4 patients recognize the man as a frequent presence in their own dreams. All the patients refer to him as this man. From January 2006 until today, at least 2,000 people have claimed they have seen this man in their dreams in many cities all over the world. Los Angeles, Berlin, Sao Paulo, Tehran, Beijing, Rome, Barcelona, Stockholm, Paris, New Delhi, Moscow, etc. At the moment, there is no ascertained relation or common trait among the people that have dreamed of seeing this man. Moreover, no living man has ever been recognised as resembling the man of the portrait by the people who have seen this man in their dreams. The aim of this website is to help those who have seen this man in their dreams and to foster communication among them, to understand who this man is and why he appears in an apparently patternless array of situations in the dreams of such diverse human subjects. Even before the confirmation that this was a hoax, many people were skeptical of the story, mainly because there's no reason that this sketch would just be lying around on a psychiatrist's desk. Surely that'd be a breach of confidentiality. Still, I remember first coming across this, probably not long after it was created, and a decent amount of people were convinced it was real, with some even claiming to have seen this man themselves. Experiences varied. In some dreams, he would show up as a love interest or friend, possibly giving cryptic life advice. In others, he would attack or kill the dreamer. The website proposed a few theories to explain this man's presence in people's dreams, quote, "Archetype theory. According to Jung's psychoanalytic theory, this man is an archetypal image belonging to the collective unconscious that can surface in times of hardship, emotional development, dramatic changes in our lives, stressful circumstances, etc., in particularly sensitive subjects. Religious theory. According to this theory, this man is the image of the Creator, that is to say, one of the forms in which God manifests himself today. This is the reason why his indications and the words he utters during the dreams should be decidedly followed by the dreamers. Dream surfer theory. It is the most interesting theory and the one that has the greatest implications, but it also has the lowest scientific credibility. According to this theory, this man is a real person who can enter people's dreams by means of specific psychological skills. Some believe that in real life, this man looks like the man in the dreams. Others think that the man in the dreams looks completely different from his real-life counterpart. Some people seem to believe that behind this man there is a mental conditioning plan developed by a major corporation. Dream imitation theory. This is a scientific psychosociological theory which claims that this phenomenon has arisen casually and has progressively developed by imitation. Basically, when people are exposed to this phenomenon, they become so deeply impressed that they start seeing this man in their dreams. Daytime recognition theory. This theory states that the apparitions of this man are purely casual. Normally, we do not remember precisely the faces we see in our dreams. The image of this man would thus be an instrument which, in the subject's waking life, facilitates recognition of an undefined image. This was revealed to be an art project as part of a guerrilla marketing campaign in 2010, when its creator, Andrea Natella, came forward and stated he had based the image of the man on a photo of his father when he was younger. Even after he admitted it was a hoax, he continued receiving emails from people claiming to have seen this man in their dreams and in real life. Several people even claimed they themselves were this man, such as Arud Kanan Iyer, an Indian guru who claimed it was proof of his miraculous powers. The actual reports of people seeing this man can probably be explained by the last two theories on the site. They likely saw the image, then dreamed about the man, or dreamed about someone who vaguely resembled him, and when they saw the image, remembered the person in their dream looking like this. The last mystery in this video is a very obscure one. In fact, it centres around the recollection of a single Reddit user, though is tied into a creepypasta that gained some popularity many years ago. The Redditor claims their memory of this was not a creepypasta though, opening up the possibility that the story was actually based on real events in the first place. There's a summary of the story on the creepypasta fandom site, so I'll read that, then we'll look at the Reddit comment. Does anyone remember an old PC game from the early 1990s called Mr. Mix? It was mainly a typing game, similar to Mario Teaches Typing, where you have to put words into a box to make a chef, Mr. Mix, place ingredients into a bowl. Unlike most typing games, however, the game was notorious for having an insane difficulty curve. It had a words per minute requirement for each level, being as low as 10 on level 1 and as high as 85 on the third. By level 5, the requirement reaches over 500, effectively making it impossible to proceed any further. One of the main things that people immediately noticed about the game was the background music. On the first level, it was an unsettling pattern of growls that got progressively louder as the level went on, often causing damage to early computer speakers that were not designed to handle extremely high volumes. The second level had no music at all, and the third had what sounded like a very low-quality recording of a hairdryer playing in the background. The remaining two levels had an incredibly loud, high-pitched ringing throughout that caused severe eardrum damage to those who managed to get that far. Another rather disturbing aspect of the game was the design of Mr. Mix himself. He was a large, round-faced, overweight man with beady eyes and red spots on his cheeks. Most children who played the game reported having vivid nightmares of Mr. Mix speaking to them in a quiet, raspy voice and threatening them to keep quiet about something. However, none of them could remember exactly what that was. One psychologist who saw many of these children reported being disturbed by the sheer amount of terror on their faces as they recounted details of the nightmare. Many of them broke down into tears in the process, begging for their parents to save them. However, no direct relationship to the game itself could be determined by these few cases, as not all children suffered the same adverse effects. For obvious reasons, the game did not sell very well. It remained in relative obscurity until a few years ago, when PC hackers got hold of a ROM of it and started digging through it. Using memory hacking software, they managed to crack the game's code and bypass the impossible 5th level. What they found, however, was highly disturbing and caused many of them to quit the expedition altogether. According to the reports these hackers left behind, the game behaves very strangely if the 5th level is bypassed. The game crashes violently and closes, writing a bunch of files to the user's System32 directory to the point that the RAM is almost completely filled. These files are reportedly pictures of people with horribly deformed faces, appearing to scream in pain and agony, their eyes bleeding from their tear ducts, and their outer layer of skin torn cleanly off in multiple places. If the user attempts to delete these files, their computer will violently crash and blue screen, causing permanent, irreparable damage to the hard drive. The hackers found that this was caused by a lone byte in the game's ROM that triggered when the 5th level was completed. After removing this byte, they were able to proceed to the 6th and final level. Unfortunately, all of the original hackers declined to discuss what they saw in the final level. Each of them became extremely paranoid and reclusive afterwards, refusing to talk about anything related to the game and showing astonishingly extreme symptoms of post-traumatic stress disorder. Most of them ceased to be able to form coherent sentences within a week. Within a month, all of them had gone missing. All remaining copies of the game were destroyed. To this day, no one knows what was in it that caused the group so much psychological damage. Maybe it's better that way. 2 years after this incident, a man was arrested for trying to kidnap an 8-year-old girl from a grocery store. Through DNA and fingerprint analysis, he was identified as one of the original hackers who had viewed the final level of the game. He was wearing a white chef's hat and had a look of unspeakable malice and insanity on his face. When interrogated, the man would only say one thing: "I'm Mr. Mix. Shh." The Reddit comment I found was much less dramatic and had no mention of the game filling the user's system with terrifying photos, or one of the hackers dressing like Mr. Mix and trying to kidnap a child. It read, "There is one that is still somewhat of a mystery, but unless anyone on here ever had experience with it, I seem to be the only one so far that firmly remembers its existence, although the rest of the story I cannot corroborate as it's probably fake. It's about the early to mid-90s old PC typing game that is now a creepypasta called Mr. Mix. Let me assure you I specifically remember this from around 1995, maybe 94, but my mum bought it as a gift for my aunt who needed to learn typing. Parts of the story that are true and I remember is that the game did have levels 1 to 5, and the 5th level's word per minute requirement was not humanly possible. Also, it did cause major glitches which required you to power cycle the PC off and back on, and the insanely, almost certainly intentionally, loud noises sounding what I remember to be almost similar to a fax machine but not quite. The videos floating around online of Mr. Mix gameplay are not the original one, and I've yet to ever find a trace otherwise of this game anywhere online. As I said, the rest of the story, which I'll refrain from discussing, I never saw or knew anything about. But then again, we couldn't make it past level 5, and we weren't hackers, so who knows. Considering this comment leaves out some of the really dramatic details mentioned in the creepypasta, it seems at least somewhat believable. A lot of scary stories have a grain of truth in them, so it's certainly not beyond the realm of possibility, and the idea that there was a typing game with a final level that was designed to be too difficult to complete could make sense. If the point was to teach someone how to type, they'd just continue trying to pass the 5th level and probably get faster and faster each time, so it would continue to improve their typing. If the 5th level was supposed to be impossible, perhaps hacking it to pass it would result in some glitches, though likely not disturbing images being downloaded on your device. The Redditor said they couldn't make it past the 5th level though, and they still experienced glitches and the loud noises that sounded like a fax machine. Apart from many sources referencing the creepypasta, I couldn't find any recollections of the game being real, so if it was likely not a well-known game. It could well have been discontinued shortly after its release due to the glitches, and if there was nothing particularly noteworthy about the gameplay. It's not surprising that there doesn't seem to be any record of it online now. It was apparently released in the early to mid-90s. The World Wide Web only became available to the broader public in 1993, and in the first few years, the majority of people didn't have access to it. It wasn't like today where if you buy a game, you can write a review on Google for everyone to see. Even if there was some discussion about it online, it's entirely possible that those mentions were deleted a long time ago. The amount of information, comments, accounts, and entire websites that have been lost over the years is almost incomprehensible, so it wouldn't be surprising if this was one of them. Another possibility is that the game the Redditor is talking about was real, but it wasn't called Mr. Mix. In that case, it'd be a lot harder to find a record of it. The comment is pretty vague. It says the game is now a creepypasta, but it doesn't specifically state how similar the game was to the creepypasta, apart from that it had 5 levels, and the 5th level was impossible to complete. We can assume it was also set in a restaurant with a chef character, but it's not a lot to go off, especially if the game was quite obscure, and the name of it is unknown. It's also possible that the Redditor has some kind of false memory of this game. Perhaps they heard about the creepypasta and falsely remembered the game being real and playing it themselves. They seem to remember it pretty well, but memory is notoriously unreliable, and various studies have shown how easy it can be for the brain to create false memories. Even if there's some truth in the Redditor's recollection, the actual game could have been vastly different to what they described here. Maybe it was set in a restaurant, but there were many more levels, or maybe it had some bad glitches, but the storyline was different to what they remember. I'm intrigued to see if anyone watching this has any memory of this game. Have you played or heard of a game that sounds even vaguely similar? Let me know in the comments. I'd be interested to hear your thoughts and theories in the comments, plus any suggestions you might have for a future video. If you enjoyed the video, please consider liking and subscribing. Huge thank you to my Ko-fi members and channel members whose names are on screen now. I really appreciate your support. Thanks for watching, and I'll see you next time in a new video.